Welcome back to Mental Mike's Recovery Radio, where recovery meets discovery. I am Mental Mike, and this is episode 26. This week, I want to step back and look at the bigger picture, at the framework itself, at why the Unified Flux Model approaches addiction the way it does, and why that approach works in ways that more traditional models sometimes cannot reach. The standard view of addiction as a chronic brain disease has given us invaluable science. We understand neurotransmitters, tolerance, withdrawal, all because of that research. But the UFM asks a deeper question. What if the brain changes we see in addiction are not the root cause, but the physical receipt for a debt that started somewhere else? Somewhere in disconnection. From yourself, from others, from meaning, from the natural flow of life itself. The UFM calls that gap the void. And it is not a weakness, it is not a character flaw, it is a signal, a loud, painful signal that something essential needs to be restored. Substances answered that signal with what the UFM calls borrowed energy, temporary, artificial, and always repaid with interest. The relief was real, the cost was real too. And understanding that cycle, without shame, with compassion and clarity, is how healing actually begins. This week, the UFM lays out 4 integrated pathways of recovery: neurobiological rebalancing, emotional and psychological integration, energetic realignment, and existential and spiritual exploration. None of them work alone. All of them work together. And together they form something I have spent my life believing in. Recovery as the restoration of a whole person. Not just the stopping of a behavior, not just the management of a disease, but the full return to yourself. And today, I want to introduce you to Malik. Malik's story carries a particular weight with this week's material, because Malik is someone who had tried to recover by focusing only on the behavior, only on the stopping, and kept finding that something deeper kept pulling him back. What shifted for him was understanding the why beneath the what, the void that the substance had been answering, the disconnection that had never been named, let alone healed. His journey into the full framework of the UFM, all 4 pathways, maps directly onto everything this week's material is asking you to consider. Malik did not just stop, he restored himself, and his story just might show you what that restoration looks like from the inside. So settle in. Open your mind to the full picture today, and let's go deeper together.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're really getting into something different, a framework called the Unified Flux Model, or UFM. It offers a radically different way to look at addiction.
Yeah.
Our goal here is to take that, standard view of addiction and kind of flip it. We're pulling together insights from neuroscience, psychology, sure, but also energetics, and even spirituality.
Exactly.
To give you a clearer, maybe more compassionate path to understanding what's really going on with addiction.
And the UFM starts with a pretty fundamental idea about who we are. It suggests we're basically dynamic energy fields, always interacting with this larger universal energy flow.
Okay, energy fields. So addiction fits in how?
Well, in this view, addiction isn't the core problem, the disease itself. It's actually a symptom. It's like a signal telling us that this natural energetic flow we're supposed to have, it's become disrupted somehow, fragmented, dysregulated.
Right. That's a big departure from the usual way we talk about it.
Yeah.
Let's maybe touch on that traditional view first, the medical model.
We should, yeah. It's valuable.
It defines addiction usually as a chronic brain disease, right? Compulsive use continues despite the harm. And that model gives us critical insights into neurotransmitters and brain circuits.
Absolutely. That research is vital. We wouldn't understand tolerance or withdrawal nearly as well without it. But the UFM argues that if we only look at it as a brain disease, well, we risk missing the bigger picture.
Reducing the human suffering to just chemistry.
Kind of, yeah. It potentially overlooks the deeper context. The UFM's main shift, the really transformative part, is saying addiction is a symptom of something deeper breaking down.
Which is?
A breakdown in connection. And not just, feeling lonely. It's a disconnection from your authentic self, from others in a meaningful way, and even from this energetic fabric of existence the model talks about.
Okay, so if addiction is the smoke, what's the fire? Where does this disruption, this energetic fragmentation, actually start?
The roots are often in places we're starting to understand much better now. Things like underlying trauma, chronic emotional pain that hasn't been processed, even deep existential distress, like a loss of meaning.
So things that wound us deeply.
Precisely. Adverse experiences, trauma. We know these things leave lasting marks biologically and psychologically. So the addictive behavior, it often starts as a way to cope, a way to manage an internal state that just feels unbearable.
Now, reframing feels important, because if you're listening and struggling, this suggests something hopeful, doesn't it?
I think so.
It means maybe you're not fundamentally broken, you're not, morally weak. If addiction is a symptom of being disconnected or out of alignment,
then alignment can be restored, right? Connection can be rebuilt. It shifts the focus from pathology to potential restoration.
Okay, let's dig into that restoration idea. You mentioned energy being foundational. Now, that word energy, it can sound a bit abstract.
It can, and that's a fair point. But the UFM really insists this isn't just like a nice metaphor. It draws parallels, believe it or not, to physics.
Physics? How so?
Well, the idea that matter is essentially condensed energy. And some theories in physics and consciousness studies even link consciousness itself to the quantum field. Now, that's edge science for sure.
Right, a bit of a leap, maybe.
It is a leap conceptually, but the bridge is our actual lived experience. Think about it. Our emotional states, our physical vitality. These are the ways we feel our energetic state.
Right, yeah, I see. So contrast those states for us. What does aligned feel like versus fragmented?
When your energy field is coherent, aligned, you feel it. There's vitality, a natural sense of well-being, emotional balance, clear thinking. You feel connected, things seem to flow.
Like being in the zone.
Sort of, yeah. A natural state of optimal function. But when trauma, chronic stress, or emotional pain hits, it fragments that field.
And that feels like?
That's when you get the depletion, the instability, brain fog, confusion, a feeling of being isolated, cut off, stuck. The energy just isn't moving correctly. It's blocked or it's leaking out.
And this fragmented state, this feeling stuck, does that lead to what many people in recovery call the void, that deep emptiness?
Exactly. The UFM defines the void not just psychologically, but as an energetic reality. It's that tangible, felt sense of being severed from that universal flow, from the source of meaning, vitality, purpose. It is that existential emptiness made real in your experience.
Wow. And what causes that void specifically? Is it just one thing, like trauma?
It's rarely just one thing. It's more like an accumulation. Trauma definitely plays a huge role. It fragments our sense of self, makes us feel unsafe in our own skin. But there's also attachment wounds.
Like early relationship problems.
Yeah, early experiences where connection felt unsafe, unreliable, or was just absent. That teaches you on a deep level that connection isn't trustworthy. Then layer on top maybe a loss of meaning or purpose in life, that existential disconnection.
Like feeling adrift.
Exactly. And even societal pressures, living in ways that feel alienating or out of sync with who you really are. All these things dig that hole, that void. But the crucial point is, the void isn't the enemy. It's a signal.
A signal for what?
A signal calling for genuine connection, for healing, for meaning.
Okay, so you have this profound pain, this void screaming inside. It makes sense you desperately seek relief. And that's where substances come in.
That's the trap. Substances offer what the UFM calls borrowed energy.
Borrowed energy. How does that work biologically?
It works because substances can artificially and very rapidly shift your energetic state. They essentially hijack the brain's natural reward pathways.
Flooding it with dopamine, things like that?
Precisely. Dopamine, endorphins, chemicals that create intense feelings of pleasure, relief, euphoria, maybe even a sense of connection or confidence that your depleted system just can't generate on its own anymore.
Ah, so it feels like the void is closing. The pain stops temporarily.
Exactly. You get this false sense of peace, this artificial connection. And when you're suffering that intensely, that relief doesn't just feel good. It feels like you've been saved. It feels essential.
But the term is borrowed energy, which implies
there's a cost, a significant one, an energy debt that has to be repaid.
Okay, let's break down that debt. What are the terms?
Well, first, there's the direct neurobiological cost, tolerance and dependence. Your brain is smart. It tries to adapt to this constant artificial flood
Oh,
by basically turning down the volume on its own natural systems. It reduces its own dopamine receptors or produces less of its own feel-good chemicals. So now you need more and more of the substance just to feel normal, let alone good. That's a physical debt being accrued.
right. The baseline keeps dropping.
Exactly. And second, you're literally borrowing from your future well-being to escape the present pain. When the substance wears off, the system crashes hard. That's withdrawal.
And the suffering is often worse than before.
Often much worse. You pay back that borrowed piece with interest, intensified anxiety, depression, physical sickness. And the underlying energetic disconnection, it's actually deeper now.
So the very thing you use to escape the void actually digs it deeper in the long run.
That's the cruel irony. Relying on the external substance pushes you further away from finding authentic, sustainable sources of well-being within yourself or through genuine connection. The attempt to regulate spirals into dysregulation and loss of control, compulsive seeking takes over.
It really highlights that compassionate angle again, doesn't it? You didn't reach for substances because you were inherently flawed.
No, you reached for them because you were suffering intensely from this energetic disconnection, this void, and they offered incredibly effective, albeit temporary relief. It was a solution, just a very costly one.
And this isn't just theoretical. You're saying this energetic disruption, this trauma, it shows up physically in the brain.
Absolutely. This isn't woo-woo. It's grounded in neurobiology. The chronic stress, the trauma, the energetic fragmentation we're discussing, they create measurable physical changes in brain structure and function. Think of them as the physical receipts for the energetic debt.
Okay, walk us through some of those receipts. What changes do we actually see in the brain?
We see significant impairment in key areas. The prefrontal cortex, or PFC, think of it as the brain's CEO, responsible for planning, impulse control, decision-making, considering consequences.
That gets compromised.
Yes. Its function is often significantly dampened, which makes it harder to resist impulses, harder to stick to recovery goals, harder to think long-term.
That makes sense. What else?
We often see hyperactivity in the amygdala. The amygdala is like the brain's threat detector. It's alarm system.
So it's constantly firing.
Pretty much. It becomes overly sensitive. You end up living in a state of heightened alert, constantly scanning for danger, reacting strongly to minor stressors. It's like the tiger in the room feeling, even when things are objectively safe.
That sounds exhausting, like being permanently stressed out.
It is, and that ties into another key finding, HPA axis dysfunction. That's the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the body's central stress response system.
So it's stuck in the on position.
Essentially, yes, chronic activation. The body is constantly flooded with stress hormones like cortisol, which drains energy, impairs immune function, and further reinforces the drive to seek external relief just to cope with the internal stress.
Hearing about these physical brain changes, PFC impairment, hyperactive amygdala, HPA axis dysfunction, it could sound pretty permanent, like the damage is done.
It could, and that's why the next point is so critical. The hopeful truth here is neuroplasticity.
The brain's ability to change itself.
Exactly. It's the brain's incredible capacity to reorganize, to form new connections, to reroute pathways throughout our entire lives.
Yeah.
These changes caused by addiction and trauma, they are not necessarily permanent. They're not a life sentence.
So the healing work actually helps the brain rewire.
Precisely. The work involved in recovery, the things that help restore energetic connection and emotional balance, they actively harness neuroplasticity. They encourage the brain to build new, healthier pathways, essentially healing itself.
Which brings us to recovery itself. In the UFM framework, it's clearly much more than just stopping the substance.
Oh, absolutely. It's about restoring the whole person, rebuilding that flow, that connection on all levels. Abstinence is necessary, of course, but it's the beginning, not the end goal.
And the UFM maps this out with 4 integrated pathways, right? They need to happen together.
Yes, they're interconnected and synergistic. You can't really succeed long-term by focusing on just one.
Okay, let's walk through them. Pathway 1.
First is neurobiological rebalancing. This is the foundational physical repair work, healing those affected brain pathways.
Oh, what does that involve?
It involves stabilizing the basics. Consistent sleep, good nutrition, physical movement, or exercise, these things directly help regulate neurotransmitters and reduce stress. It also strongly emphasizes practices like mindfulness and meditation.
Which we know can literally change brain structure.
Exactly. They calm the amygdala, strengthen the PFC. So it's very concrete, physical healing.
Makes sense. Pathway 2.
Pathway 2 is emotional and psychological integration. This is where the deeper work happens. Processing the underlying trauma, healing those old attachment wounds we talked about.
Dealing with the roots of the void.
Yes. It's about bringing those fragmented parts of the self back together, rebuilding a sense of self-worth that often gets shattered by addiction and the experiences that led to it. Therapy, group work, specific trauma modalities fit here.
Okay, pathway 3 gets more into the energy side again.
It does. Energetic realignment. This is about directly working to restore that sense of flow and vitality, getting unstuck.
And what kinds of practices help with that?
Things like certain types of breath work, which can profoundly shift your physiological and energetic state very quickly. Meditation, obviously, but also somatic practices, things that help you get back into your body, process stored tension through movement, sensation, not just thinking about it.
Less intellectualizing, more feeling.
Right. Creative expression is huge here, too. Art, music, writing. And critically, finding genuine, supportive community that restores the energetic connection to others.
Powerful. And the final pathway.
Pathway 4 is existential and spiritual exploration. This tackles that deep sense of disconnection from meaning and purpose head on.
Filling the void from the inside out.
That's the idea. Reconnecting with what truly matters to you. Finding purpose, maybe through service, aligning your life with your core values, exploring spiritual connection in whatever way feels authentic. This addresses that hunger for meaning that substances often try to mimic.
It's striking how interconnected these all feel. Like doing the physical work in pathway 1 probably makes the emotional processing in pathway 2 feel safer, more possible.
Absolutely. And processing trauma in pathway 2 frees up energy, which helps with pathway 3. And when your energy is flowing better, that spiritual search in pathway 4 feels less like grasping and more like genuine discovery. Each one supports and amplifies the others.
It paints a picture of recovery, not as a battle, but as a comprehensive restoration project for the whole self.
That's a great way to put it. The UFM really offers this non-judgmental, empowering roadmap. It says, look, addiction is a signal, a clear, loud signal that connection to self, others, meaning energy, needs deep restoration. And crucially, it shows us how to restore it on every level.
From the quantum field, as you mentioned, right down to the prefrontal cortex.
Exact.
That connection between the inner feeling, the void, and the actual physical debt in the brain gives us something powerful to leave our listeners with. A final thought to consider. If the void truly represents the energetic reality of disconnection, how might the unprocessed weight of past trauma, that fragmentation of consciousness, directly translate into the physical and energetic debt that recovery requires us to pay back, not with suffering, but with genuine self-restoration and reconnection?
That's the work.
That's the work. Something to mull over.
This podcast explained addiction in a way that honestly made me emotional, because for years I thought something inside me was fundamentally broken, not injured, broken. And when you believe that about yourself long enough, you stop expecting healing. You just focus on survival. That's what addiction became for me after the military. Survival. I came home from deployment physically alive, but emotionally disconnected from everything. Couldn't sleep right, couldn't relax in crowds. Always scanning exits, always tense. My nervous system never came back from combat, and cocaine gave me temporary relief from the emptiness and exhaustion at the same time. That sounds contradictory, but addicts understand it. The podcast talking about addiction as a symptom instead of the core disease hit me hard immediately, because underneath the drugs was trauma, isolation, hypervigilance, meaninglessness. The drugs weren't random. They were an attempt to regulate a completely dysregulated system. That explanation felt compassionate without removing accountability. That balance mattered to me. The void section honestly described my life after deployment perfectly. Not sadness exactly, not even depression all the time. More like disconnection from existence itself, like I was physically here, but emotionally cut off from life. The podcast calling the void an energetic reality actually made sense to me, because trauma absolutely drains something out of people. You can see it in veterans sometimes, in addicts too. Eyes go flat, energy collapses, meaning disappears, and substances temporarily bring the lights back on. That's the trap. The borrowed energy concept was probably the most powerful thing in the episode for me, though, because drugs absolutely felt like borrowing life from tomorrow. Temporary confidence, temporary peace, temporary relief. Then afterward, the debt came due worse than before. Anxiety, crash, paranoia, shame, isolation. Every high was stealing energy from my future nervous system. Nobody ever explained addiction that way before. The neuroscience section hit hard too, especially the amygdala stuff, because living with PTSD feels exactly like having a threat detector that never powers down. The podcast describing the amygdala as hyperactive made perfect sense. My body reacts to harmless situations like danger constantly, loud sounds, unexpected movement, conflict, and eventually substances became the fastest way to shut the alarm system off temporarily. The part about the prefrontal cortex weakening during addiction explained something else too, why I'd make decisions sober that completely disappeared once cravings hit. That wasn't lack of intelligence. My stress system was overriding rational thinking. That realization helped reduce some of the shame I carried. The neuroplasticity section gave me hope, though, real hope, because I honestly thought my brain was permanently damaged after years of trauma and addiction. But hearing the brain can physically rewire itself through recovery work, that changed how seriously I started taking things like sleep, exercise, therapy, and meditation, not self-help gimmicks. Brain repair. The breathwork section surprised me most. I thought it sounded ridiculous, honestly. Then one night after a panic episode, I tried the breathing exercises they talked about. Slow breathing, long exhale, and my body actually calmed down naturally. That moment shook me emotionally, because for the first time in years, relief came without chemicals. That felt almost impossible before recovery. The spiritual part of the episode stayed with me too. Not religion necessarily. Purpose, meaning, connection. The realization that survival alone isn't enough to sustain a human being long term. That truth hit me deep. And maybe that's what this whole recovery process actually is. Not just removing substances, rebuilding connection to yourself, your body, other people, and life itself after years of internal fragmentation. That feels bigger than sobriety somehow. That feels like becoming human again.
If something in this conversation stood out to you, don't ignore that. That's usually where the work begins. Recovery isn't about trying harder. It's about understanding what's actually happening and learning how to respond differently over time. If you're ready to take the next step, you can find resources, guidance, and support at soulrecoveryhub.com. Take what you heard today, sit with it, and keep moving forward. Copyright 2026, Mental Mike, all rights reserved.